What if I told you there's still a place in America where when you call for a taxi, a horse carriage comes to pick you up? It's a place where Google Maps can't even give you directions to. And interestingly, it's only 300 miles from the third most populated city in America, Chicago. People have been traveling to this island by water since around 900 AD. We're going to be taking this trip by air.
70 Papa, maintain 5,000 until coast route, cleared RNAV runway 26 approach at Mackinac.
Because it's not only the destination, but also the journey. Flying like this is the only way to see these breathtaking views on our way to Mackinac Island in Lake Huron. And we'll get to experience what I like to call a civilian pilot aircraft carrier landing. We started this trip in northern Indiana with a flight plan keeping us close to the lakeshore for the views and an altitude of 5,000 feet to stay under the heavy traffic into Chicago. And we ended with an interesting approach completely over the waters of Lake Huron. So I got really busy this morning. She's been helping me with the packing. She even got our cooler ready with some lunch for us on our flight trip today. Looks like we've got some really yummy snacks in there. I'd like to share a little about the plane we'll be flying. The Cirrus SR22 is the most popular GA aircraft of this century. Because of its capabilities and safety features, we can make this trip in just one day. I'm also going to include some details and a bit of a review of this plane throughout the video.
So we take a look at the engine we've got here. This is actually a brand new, updated version of the IO550N. It's the N41B. This is a 6-cylinder, horizontally opposed, fuel-injected engine. It's rated at 310 horsepower at 2,700 RPM.
The plane has a brand new custom leather interior and updated avionics, which I'll talk a little bit more about later during the flight. We started our journey on a Saturday morning. A bit low on fuel for the flight, so we stopped at the pump to fill it up before taking off. This plane holds 84 gallons with 81 gallons usable. It can fly over 1,000 miles non-stop. Just a side note, I'm a Cirrus instructor for charter pilots. I have to train charter pilots to pass FAA check rides, which means training them to a higher standard. So you just might hear me talking like an instructor at times during this video. This aircraft is for sale. You can find the details down in the description below. And we include free Cirrus SR22 training for the new owner. Now before we depart, we want to set up all our avionics, entering the flight plan and frequencies for talking to air traffic control. Since the Cirrus doesn't have nose wheel steering, if you keep about 14% power, you can taxi pretty easily with just the rudder. I also got our IFR clearance on the ground, so we'll just run a final check before departure and then take off. I really like the large screen for monitoring the engine during takeoff. During our takeoff roll, we will lift at 70 to 73 knots, at 80, flaps up, and 400 feet, caps available. Then we'll do a right turn out the 400 feet with a call to ATC. Then we'll cruise climb to 5,000 feet. So we've reached our cruise altitude and have our autopilot flying. As we approach the eastern shore of Lake Michigan, you can see that there's some ice formed, but even in the middle of winter it won't completely freeze over. As the second largest lake in the Great Lakes chain, it has never frozen over completely and has only come close 3 times in the last 50 years. Just a half an hour into our trip and we're flying over Lake Michigan, the only Great Lake that's entirely inside the US. The horizon fades into the mist, making it seem like endless sky. And it's no wonder, because this lake holds 6.4 trillion cubic yards of water and has a maximum depth of 923 feet. Now this lake has many nicknames like the Shipwreck Graveyard. They estimate up to 2,000 shipwrecks can be found in these waters, and many are preserved by the cold fresh water. Another is the inland sea, because of the ocean-like waves, which might be one of the reasons for some of those shipwrecks, actually. I've even found a map for shipwrecked treasure hunters, although to share the details, I might need to ask for a share of the spoils. I've been to the eastern shore of Lake Michigan that we just flew over, and I've seen the world's largest freshwater sand dunes. A lake this large will produce its own weather, leading to a lake effect that can actually lead to heavy snowfall in the surrounding areas. Cirrus has an 8.8 to 1 glide ratio, so even though we are a bit far from shore right now, the lakeshore is still within the glide radius. But since we're heading further away from shore, it's better to request a deviation to get our flight path to head back closer.
10 degrees right for about 10 minutes to stay within glide distance of the shore, and then we can be back on course 670 Papa.
November 670 Papa, to deviation 10 degrees right of course approved, clear direct FETEV when able and advise.
10 degrees right of course approved, and will advise when able to go direct FETEV 670 Papa, thank you.
It is really comfortable and relaxing to fly the Cirrus. I've taken them on long cross countries and even across the Rockies. Plus, passengers get amazing views, like this area of ice that looks like marble. Now, the avionics in the SR22 were well thought out, and the layout design is very useful. In fact, Cirrus was the first single-engine piston aircraft to have a fully integrated glass cockpit. I like the large 10.4-inch primary and multifunction displays. I like how simple the PFD displays all the data, and how the MFD has multiple pages providing useful information for every stage of flight. This page provides everything needed to monitor the engine, fuel, and electrical system. This image did not come from my plane. I have it here as an example to discuss how to operate this aircraft properly. Even though all the gauges are in the green, it is operating lean of peak at 92% power, which can be harmful to the engine. These IO550 engines can very effectively run lean of peak, but should be at a lower power setting when doing so. That's why one part of our training focuses on engine management. We've upgraded the Garmin 430 in this plane to a 650 Xi, which greatly reduces pilot workload and makes it easier for me to fly. We've also installed a Garmin 345 transponder, so not only can others see us, but we can get free traffic and weather in flight. We've also installed the latest Garmin digital audio panel with Bluetooth, which provides clearer 3D audio for the pilot, lets you play music, connect your phone for calls, and even playback ATC calls. The secondary GPS navcom is a Garmin 430, and the autopilot is an STEX 55, which is a nice autopilot. Even on an IFR flight, since it's VFR conditions, as a pilot, I am responsible for watching for traffic. This is actually very easy to do in this plane with the large windows, alerts on the Garmin 650, and it'll even show on our multifunction display or a connected phone or iPad. Passing over Pellston Regional Airport, we will begin to prepare for landing and brief the approach plate. But take a look at the profile section of this plate. There's one point that could easily be missed. A standard glide path angle for an RNAV approach is 3 degrees, and your descent rate should be 5 times your ground speed. So let's say 80 knots with a headwind, which means you will descend 400 feet per minute. This approach has a 3.7 degree angle, which means if we were to descend only 400 feet per minute, we would end up quite high reaching the runway. When selecting the initial approach fix, the most convenient way to fly this approach is via Khosrow. I'd initially planned Huvti, just for fun, to hand fly the procedure turn out over the water.
Do you want to go direct to Khosrow for the RNAV 26 at Mackinac?
Then ATC called and asked if I wanted to fly via Khosrow, so I agreed. A touchscreen GPS means it only takes a few seconds to set up our approach. Once it's activated, it will show on our large MFD screen with all the waypoints. As we get closer to our destination, it looks like our tail camera is showing us just how cold it is and fogging up the lens. But we still have some beautiful views of Michigan's Lower Peninsula. About an hour and a half into our flight, we reach Lake Huron and get some close-ups of the lake with beautiful clouds that look like silk for our backdrop. Lake Huron is the third largest of the Great Lakes by volume, and the fourth largest in the world by surface area. It has over 3,827 miles of shoreline, making it the longest shoreline of all the Great Lakes. It holds over 30,000 islands, and today we get to land on one of the most beautiful ones. This is one of the fastest single-engine planes. That's how we can take a trip like this in just one day. We are flying at a speed of 207 knots, or 238 miles per hour over the ground, with a little help from a tailwind. For the approach, I've got the next waypoint of our flight plan from GPS 1, and then the final destination in GPS 2, so both will display on the large PFD screen. It also shows the approach path on the EHSI. My daughter's in charge of handling the 6 cameras recording our journey. It's quite the task.
Yeah, the thing with that, if I record with a big camera, the front ones, it will get in the way of this camera up here, and that's better, more stable view, even if one of the screens flickers a lot. So.
Our autopilot is capable of flying this entire trip from just after takeoff through the approach until just before landing, and many pilots like to use it through the whole flight for the convenience. I do use the autopilot during the cruise, but prefer to hand fly the approaches most days to maintain proficiency, since the approach requires precision control throughout. Civilian pilots don't get a chance to land on an aircraft carrier deck, so this is about as close as we'll get. And landings like this can be challenging, with heavy gusting winds and over the water where you don't have good depth perception to judge your altitude. When you learn how to fly a plane correctly, these challenging landings can be fun to fly. At about 500 feet, we put in full flaps, and we'll have our power lower than normal in order to maintain our steeper descent rate that was listed on the approach plate. The Mackinac Island Airport started as a grass strip back in 1934. It was upgraded to a paved runway in 1963. In 2018 alone, the airport had over 11,000 aircraft landings, which comes to about 30 per day. Just like that, in just under 2 hours we've arrived at our destination. It would take more than 8 hours to drive, and then you'd have to hop on a ferry. By the time we had shut down, we had an island resident coming out to the ramp and asking to take a photo of our beautiful plane.
It's burgundy.
It's actually ruby.
Ruby?
Yeah, it's a metallic with...
When you guys came in here, it really caught my eye.
Thank you.
I was on the phone, I said, wow, this plane is beautiful coming in.
We always take care of our planes, and it's important to keep the engine warm in these temperatures, even if that means walking through a foot of snow to plug it in. Although if we had just waited a few more minutes, the airport staff was on his way out to shovel a path for us.
Again, we had just arrived out at the airport and wanted to see when we could get a ride into town.
We had a Beechcraft Queen Air depart just after we landed. This piston twin is based on the Twin Bonanza and became the basis for the successful King Air turboprop. Besides the ferry, Air travel is the only way onto the island, so there is a continuous flow of planes in and out of this airport. It only takes me a minute to fill out the landing form, and the fee is only $15. Then we're on our way out to catch our ride into town. The 2-mile ride will take us through a part of the state park, which actually makes up over 82% of the island. Having to borrow some money from my daughter to pay for the horse taxi is something she'll remind me of for the next few years. Private vehicles have been banned here since 1898, so horse carriage is the primary transportation. Most use Belgian draft horses like Ellie and Yeller, who gave us our ride. This breed is often used for not only pulling carriages, but also plowing and logging, because they're very strong and weigh about a ton, making them one of the 5 largest horse breeds. You can actually see where they compact the snow on the roads instead of removing it, because some residents do have snowmobiles to travel in the winter. During the summer, many people use bikes to get around, but there can be up to 600 horses on the island to handle the tourist traffic. Now this video is mostly focused on our journey to the island. To give the island the attention it deserves, I'm actually planning a more detailed trip and plan to have a series on it, so please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to be notified when those are ready. Our ride into town is ending as we come on Market Street, which is the main road through town. And it's quite busy, as you can see, with the one other horse carriage that's transporting some building supplies in front of us. At this point in our journey, we've worked up an appetite, and we wanted to shop at the oldest grocery store in America that's been family operated since 1884.
We'll grab this since we've only got about 5 minutes to get back to the cart.
Okay.
Our timing worked out perfect so that our ride back to the airport included some residents who had just got off the ferry. This means we got a free tour of the residential areas while dropping off the other passengers. We heard about their histories and how they came from different parts of the country to live on the island. When prepping for our departure, we decided to take off VFR so we could fly around the island for a closer look and head over the Mackinac Bridge before picking up our IFR clearance to head back home. My apologies here. When putting the cameras back for our departure, we had the wrong setting on this camera, which is why the screens look like they're flickering. As we're taxiing out, you can see we'll have a beautiful sunset departure. We set up for a static takeoff, even though Cirrus can take off from very short runways. Today, our takeoff distance is only about 700 feet. And you can see just how high the plane climbed before we even reached the end of the runway. The natural beauty of this destination has been maintained because of the 1,800-acre state park. With over 70 miles of roads and trails, you can experience it any way you want, from hiking to biking to horse-drawn carriage tours. By the time we're turning south along the western shore of the island, we've already climbed to about 4,000 feet. The beaches of the island each have something to offer, from a beautiful sunrise to a gorgeous sunset behind the Mackinac Bridge, to excellent rock skipping and even great places to watch the ferries come and go. Most are more rocky, but they've got beautiful crystal clear water and can be accessed from the island's 8.2-mile perimeter road. You can see that the cloud layer is building to the north, but we've still got a great view of the Mackinac Bridge. Fortunately, the weather cooperated and the bridge wasn't covered in mist. The Mackinac Bridge connects Michigan's upper and lower peninsula, crossing the Straits of Mackinac, which separates Lake Michigan from Lake Huron. At over 5 miles long, this bridge is the longest bridge in the Western Hemisphere, and the 7th longest bridge in the entire world. Because of its location, there are times when it will be closed to traffic due to excessively high winds. The highest wind ever recorded was 117 miles per hour. But don't worry, it was built to withstand winds up to 600 miles per hour. A view like this will never get old. This is one of the best ways to watch a sunset. Although it's getting darker and colder outside, inside it's nice and warm and comfortable. The perfect place to be after a long day. I always enjoy watching the cities lighting up below when we're on a night flight. One of the greatest features of the Cirrus is the airframe parachute. On a night flight like this, it is a great feeling knowing you have the parachute just in case you need it. As the weather in front of us is beginning to deteriorate, you can see the mist building below. This is why I like to have multiple resources in the cockpit to help show me the weather and keep an eye on it. We can see when the rain starts as a reflection on the nav light, and then using a flashlight, we can watch as it gets heavier until it's pouring across our windshield. Any colder, and we would have to worry about ice buildup. But with this plane, we do have anti-ice just as protection in case of unexpected icing. Our approach back home was very interesting. It was a dark night, heavy rain, and low visibility. Hand flying the aircraft and not being able to see anything until suddenly the runway appears just a few hundred feet in front of you. I always feel a sense of accomplishment after completing a safe landing.
Back my direction. There, clear. Straight out.
Tucking our airplane back into its hangar wraps up our journey where we just completed a 3-day road trip in less than a day. You don't even need to own a plane to take an amazing trip like this. Just call us, our charter can take you anywhere. I hope that you enjoyed watching our video. I would appreciate it if you would take a moment to like and subscribe to our channel, as that'll help us to grow. Additionally, if you've got any comments, please feel free to leave them below and I'll do my best to answer them.